Hi. This session is about what it means these days to be a mobile developer. I'm not sure if all of you attended the mobile panel, or some of you, I think, also were here in the previous talk I had before lunch. So it's a sort of continuation. In this particular presentation, I will essentially focus on what it means a mobile, which is essentially, shift. It's a paradigm shift for everybody. During the panel, there was a specific question about what are the success factors for applications. Yeah, and there are, when you ask this question, you can get, depending on who is the person supposed to answer and what is his primary job. The question is, the success factor is using our technologies properly for whatever it is, data synchronization, security, administration, centralization, notification. I think that it's something slightly different. Not that technologies and technology aspects are not important. Absolutely, they are key for building apps. But I think that the real point about being a mobile developer and subsequently the skills you need to mature and improve on or just refresh, the point is that mobile represents a paradigm shift. Completely change in the way in which we think of applications. That's it. That's a fundamental thing. Then once you have realized this and what it means to you and to your company, technologies and languages and frameworks and products, they are a secondary point. Important, but secondary. This is the fundamental point. So the real success factor for a mobile solution is making sure, understanding that you are doing the right thing. Making sure you are doing the right thing, and the right thing towards you are offering the right services to a mobile audience. It was the summer of 2007 when this kind of thing came out. It was not the first smartphone to appear. Before that, we had several flavors of tools running Windows Mobile, taking ages to boot, but that's another point. Well, another point. It was probably one of the points, because it was, in the end, it was kind of boring. It was not really fully addressing needs of people on mobility. I'm not sure that, when they try to sell me Windows 8, they use the argument, oh, it boots faster, it can boot in 8 seconds. I use most of the time my computer running Windows 7 in hibernate mode, and it still takes, a few seconds to get to work. Sure, when I boot from scratch, I start it up, it takes a bit of time. But the point on a laptop is not much that it takes 30 seconds. Oh, it's 30 seconds, right? So not hours to boot. So 30, okay, 8 is better than 30, but 30 is good enough. On a mobile, it's a different story, because every time this stupid device runs out of battery and dies, and I have to reboot, it takes maybe, a minute or I don't know what, but it's a lot of time. So this, simply to say that the perspective of things, the mentality of being a mobile user, and subsequently the overall set of features of a mobile solution are to be different. So it's a paradigm shift. And this kind of tool here was successful because of astral conjunction, because of the design, because people, 2007, it was far before the start of the recognized start of the worldwide crisis, economic downturn. In 2007, everybody was richer and happier than less concerned than it is today. We had a lot more money to spend. I don't know. Fact is that there was something in this tool, these icons, the apps here. And for some reason, this tool was looking nice to people. And people started using that one. But in the beginning, people started buying this tool. They weren't buying this tool because of the icons. They bought the tool because they liked it. And then they found, oh, nice icons here. What are they for? They tapped, oh, nice app. Stupid apps in the beginning, in the summer of 2007. To the point that 1 year later, in the summer of 2008, Apple opened up to the public, to all developers, the App Store. Now, you know the story about Windows Phone. Gazillion of apps and no devices sold. Okay, I can understand the Microsoft position. We had to have apps available, but they probably focused too much on apps and too little on good devices. Because again, it's all about what the people really love. And we are now facing, with a mobile challenge, a different kind of customers that are much less forgiving than in the past. In the past, we developers, all of us, we built apps, and then we called, you are a stupid user if you are not able to use my app. My app works this way because I have constraints on the database and I cannot render out a date the way you like. For me, it's a problem to display the date in words, Thursday, 20th of September 2012. And I force you to use 9 dash, and no, you cannot use the dash, you have to use the slash, right? Okay? Because my app works this way, period. This is no longer acceptable. So in the 2009, or sort of that, I pick it up 2009 as the year where iPhone and iPhone development became significant in terms of quantity. In this decade, we essentially learned, or should have learned, that mobile software needs a critical mass of users to take off. I heard personally, and probably it could be said the same for some of you, around a decade ago, 99 for me, the first time I heard about mobile development, being WML, being WAP, were the protocols for markup and for transmission, for transportation, being the copy, the shrink-wrapped version of HTML and HTTP. So it took a lot of time, a decade, but in the end, mobile became significant when a critical mass of users started doing that significantly, and this happened with the iPhone, essentially. And what is the overall promise of mobile? The promised land of mobile that we need to take into account is anytime, anywhere, any place. Okay, anyhow. But anytime, anywhere, any place. It's not completely new. So where did I hear this? If you remember, okay, this is a link. Look, 1990. Wow, I hardly believed when I found this link that it was 1990. Actually, I remembered myself the same concept reiterated some 4 years later, so 1994, but it was the same guy. This guy, Bill Gates. And this is an excerpt from that article from the New York Times where Bill Gates was expressing his vision of information at your fingertips. Simply put, the idea is that all the data typically needed in business should be instantly accessible from a desktop personal computer. But this was 1990 or 94, or whatever the computer will evolve to in the future. This is my extension, but it's the same concept. We just changed the final 3 words. But we never had, in 20 years, information at our fingertips. No, we never had, until now, until iPhone. We never had information at fingertips. We, at most, had information at hands, which was good enough, but not the same kind of thing. And from hands to fingertips, in this small distance, is the future and is the real paradigm shift of today. So in software and specifically apps, hybrid, web-based, native, it doesn't really matter, just mobile apps, that is the effect and not the cause of the mobile phenomenon. People, in first place, like and buy devices. And then once they have and enjoy their devices, people may then, find good to have nice apps on the device. This is the essential law, the mechanics of the mobile phenomenon. So today, people like and buy the devices they want, they prefer. Most of the time, they buy Apple toys. But a lot of people like and buy Android toys, or Windows and Microsoft toys, and so forth, tablets, whatever kind of thing. So we are still talking about people. Now, developers and companies cannot ignore that people like and buy devices. Companies know their own customers, and a significant share of every company customers fall in the category of people who like and buy devices. So as a company, you should, as first thing, try to know more about what kind of people your customers are, what kind of devices they like and buy, and then you decide what to do. What I see, because my job is mostly talking to management, talking to architects and development teams about how to build mobile solutions, but very rarely I find that, requests are coming baked by a strong strategy. Earlier this year, I went to a company in North Europe, and they asked me for an iOS course, but I figured out they had the company significant .NET skills, so porting their apps to Windows Phone from WPF would have been a piece of cake. And worse yet, they were talking about internal applications to be just used by employees, so not apps to sell to customers. So within a company, there is no force, no law that takes you necessary to pick up iOS. So it was because, the point was giving employees an easy-to-manage tool, okay? So a phone would have been enough for that particular case to use instead of a laptop in the, in the place where they would be, where they were building machines. So WPF was there. Windows Phone would have been good enough. Instead, management said, no, we like iPads. We like iPhones. So the management was ready to spend a lot of money to buy everybody an iPhone or buy a good number of iPads and to develop apps for iPad from scratch, having a team of people but had no idea of what it was or what it took to write an iPhone. And the nice point was they showed me, the chief architect showed me on his own Windows phone, okay? He ported for free in his spare time the app to iPhone, to Windows Phone. And it was there, it was working. He did that in the spare time, but the management wanted them to learn and build iOS apps just for fun. It's crazy. It's crazy, but yeah, still this is something that happens sometimes. Another point, so people like and buy devices. So first rule, learn about your customers, what they do. And once you have figured out what they do, so if they use mostly iPhone or Android, or they don't use mobile phones entirely, the other point is thinking of in which way you can transform your offering of your services to address, to meet the needs, the expectations of your users and the devices that they love and use. So essentially, what I call here device-first computing, okay, is a buzzword. But essentially, it is it refers to a development paradigm in which the user, the location, is central to the way in which interaction takes place. So I'm ideally thinking of a kind of software where the software is smart to take the user and the location of the user into account. I'm talking about software like users always dreamt of and that developer never heard of. So now it's the user that dictates rules. I want this to be easy to use. I want to be able to use this software when I'm on a taxi, when I'm on a train, where I may or may not have connectivity, and so forth. And the software, to the extent that it is possible, should try to adapt. And this means for developers just a new way of thinking. One aspect. Another aspect is that devices now is the generic machine for which we write software. So we are no longer writing software for a laptop, but we write software for devices. And there is the plural here, devices. So this means multifaceted software, software with multiple faces. So the same software, so the same core business logic, but with multiple views on top of it, one per each device. But again, it's not easy. I'm flying very high. I'm not talking about, oh, multiple views. Okay, fine. So CSS. No. I'm not talking about technologies yet. I'm still talking about software with multiple views. And the hardest part is revisiting and extending purposes and activities in light of new devices and a new lifestyle. What it means, so what is the benefit for the company by having mobile solutions? The first thing that everybody should do is updating mobile websites so that they can be viewed comfortably on devices. And this is mandatory for everybody. Beyond that, having an app. Beyond that, it means essentially creating native, platform-specific apps for iPhone, for Android, and so forth. At that point, choosing iOS and or Android or just Windows Phone, and what to put into the Android, iPhone apps, and how many apps to have. That results from what you want to do, essentially. In which way you see business coming your way through devices. There should be a strong business reason for investing time and money in building apps. So it means that you should, and this is the management main purpose, rethink the way in which you do business and find out ways to deliver new or updated services through the device. This is nothing new. We went through a similar moment sort of 10 years ago when internet became mainstream. Companies had to have necessarily a website, but also companies that in '99 already had a website. There was mostly a shop window. We are here. This is our addresses. Come and visit us. There was no functionality in the website, in the first websites in 98, 99, 2000. Then with internet, well, via internet with the website there, I can try to do things. I can do e-commerce. I can do this. I can do that. So it was a way of having the vision of new business opportunities. And all companies essentially revisited or invented business models just to incorporate the power and the possibilities of the internet. Now it's the same, except that we are not talking about just the internet, but we are talking about the face of multiple devices. Look at new opportunities, new ways to provide your services, and making your customers' life easier. Now, moving towards skills and development. Developing mobile software is relatively, it's overall simple. It's not a big deal, honestly. Let's be honest. It's not a big deal. Because we are talking about applications that are essentially based on very few use cases. What I call a use case here is an interaction between the user, a screen through which the user interacts with the machine. Mobile apps are mostly based on a few. They must be based on a few, but very well selected use cases. So one thing is creating a website with 20 features. It's another thing, creating a mobile solution with 3 features. It's just easier. It has less code to be written. But the features and the use cases must be selected very well. And sometimes the interaction model has to be redesigned, reinvented, and it doesn't have to be simply the transposition of what you already have or may have working on the laptop. So the hardest part is not, in my opinion, dealing with the myriad of SDKs and languages for mobile, but just finding proper user stories and deriving use cases from there. This is the hardest part. And if you fail here, failing here is one of the reasons why mobile development is sometimes costly. It's certainly one of the reasons. Because you invest money and then you produce something that just doesn't work, that people just don't use, don't like. So you have just wasted your money. Users now are much less forgiving. Don't forget that. And also, too often, I see, giant plans being made around a mobile solution. We need to make a big project that involves synchronization data, the cloud. Facebook was not built in a day. The first time personally I heard that when I created my Facebook account was 6 years ago. Let me see what it is, this kind of Facebook. But, think about that. 3 years ago, Facebook was already popular. But it was not so central in our life. or in the life of some people, and some young people as it is today. So it didn't grow up big as it is today since the beginning. It was just a toy project that started, step by step. When we talk agile, we need to be agile. Yes, agile also means doing things step by step, after iteration, sprint after sprint. Mobile development, so implementing your mobile strategy needs to be agile. And for some reasons, we tend to see it as a waterfall model, in which everything has to be designed and cleared in advance, and then you go start. So mobile is especially about really being agile. So they do things step by step. Facebook, again, was not built in one day. Okay, now, skills. You need, for sure, web development skills, because you need to have a web backend. There might be mobile applications that you can create that are sort of self-contained. They do everything, on device. But games or simple managers of contacts or to-do lists, these kind of things. But we are not talking about business applications. And anyway, applications like a to-do list or games, there are so many of them also on Windows Phone, which is the smallest app store compared to Google and compared to the iOS App Store. That you find all of the utilities and the facilities you may need already done. So it's all about building business applications. And business applications, and Christian Weyer has been very, very clear on this point during the panel, it's mostly about form over data. So you download data, you display data into a form, or you format data in lists, and you set up read, write, or just read only screens. Get data and arrange and display data, perhaps let users edit some data in a controlled way through the device. This is the model of applications. And just for this reason, it means that how would you get data from a remote endpoint, mostly over HTTP, and downloading stuff like JSON. So it means that it requires that you, as a developer, refine your skills in web development, and especially in architecting web APIs, okay, using the technology and the details that you like most. It could be ASP.NET MVC, it could be the newest web API from Microsoft, it could be Java, it could be whatever. Okay, but we are talking about exposing, designing. It doesn't even have to be REST in the classic term, get, put, delete. As long as you have an API, a list of services you can call, endpoints you can call via HTTP, you are fine. But you need to start thinking of having possibly just one layer that can serve everything from regular sites, mobile sites, and possibly mobile apps. So backend, HTTP services, HTML5. Now, HTML5 is on everybody's mouth these days, even though, the standard is half done. And I find in HTML5, there are a lot of tags, elements that are, significantly better than in HTML4. But probably the fundamental point of HTML5 is the list of surrounding SDKs for local storage, especially local storage, that adds you more power. But HTML, okay, possibly with or without 5, just HTML, is key because it gives you tools also to build, hybrid apps, so half web-based, half native. And this could be an interesting shortcut to reduce the time it takes to develop mobile solutions. And it also helps in architecting mobile websites. Mainstream languages. So if you have a .NET background, I suggest you add Java, which is nearly C#. So it's not really a long distance to walk. But Java is important because Java opens up the world of native development on Android, and if you have to, also BlackBerry. But I've seen in my company, we had a project, the largest project we had, building at the same time the same app in 4 different platforms. People with C# skills could build Java apps, so for Android and for BlackBerry, with basically no significant delay due to the lack of knowledge, okay, of the language. But adding a bit of Java skills can only help you. And finally, another key skill that I would like to recommend are patterns of mobile development, both as far as the design and the architecture of the app is concerned. This is how I see, essentially, the overall architecture of mobile solution. I see this as everything you need from the back end to be exposed as a service, as an endpoint, a callable endpoint, and then both the website for laptops or mobile devices, tablet, smartphones, smart TVs, whatever, they ideally should get the information from the same repository, which could even be, the layer there could also be backed by some sort of cloud solution for storage. But mobile and cloud, honestly, I'm not completely sure that mobile and cloud are directly related. As I see things, for what is the architecture, I seem to be prefer the cloud is behind the level of layers you talk to. Cloud is about storage, essentially. And from the mobile, I just want to find a layer that I can talk to. And then the layer can use cloud-based forms of storage if I need be there. Websites. Okay, how to turn websites into mobile websites. The idea is giving users the best experience, and there are various 2 main approaches on how to achieve this. One is based on a feature of most browsers called media queries. Media queries is about having in the browser, because we are talking about a browser native feature, is the ability of expressing queries through which you select dynamically a CSS to be applied to the page. So in other words, you put on your website, server side, a bunch of different CSS files, and then in every page, you say, okay, if, and you express a condition, so if typically the width of the browser window is currently less than or higher than, you pick up this CSS, otherwise you pick up this CSS, otherwise you pick up this CSS. And the browser is smart enough to automatically pick the right one, even as you resize on a laptop the window of the browser. Media queries have been introduced in browsers essentially as a desktop feature to help with the resize of windows. Okay? But because they are essentially based on the width of the screen, they can be, adapted to mobile scenarios as well. So essentially, the common way of using today media queries is if the size of the screen, of the browser width, is less than 320 pixels, 320 pixels, then you assume it is a small device, and then you organize via CSS the content in a particular way that can fit into that small screen. And that works regardless of the real capabilities of the device, because it works the same way whether you are viewing the site on a small Android, or if you are viewing the same site on a small window in your large, powerful laptop. It's just a matter of the size of the browser viewport. Okay? Okay, and I already said all of it, I say, because it's all about the width of the browser viewport. No other parameters can be checked. You have no way to decide which CSS should be picked up based on things like the operating system on the device, whether it's iOS or Android or BlackBerry or this or that. The only parameter you can count on is the width. Okay, if you look at the media queries document on the W3C website, you find something like 5 or 6 properties. But, okay, one is width, as mentioned. Another one is the height, but nobody ever uses that. The height is ignored in favor of the width. Color depth, who cares? The other significant one, the aspect ratio. Okay. The other significant one is orientation, portrait or landscape, which helps in case of tablets. But you don't have any more than these 5 or 6 properties. Let me show you briefly an example of a media query. Essentially, it's all about having a link element in your web page where you use the media attribute, and you use here a query language. You build here a query using the media query language. And essentially, that means that the media to be used for the downlevel.css, okay, this one has to be picked up only if we are viewing, say, not printing, this page, and whether the max device width is 320 pixels. So down level is CSS will be used only if the width of the browser is less than 320 pixels. And similarly, by replicating this statement several times, you can, okay, the top level CSS, if you have a width less than 800 and so forth, and you can create segments, okay? But you only create segments and classify views based on the width, detected width of the screen. Okay, now, in which way downlevel.css is different from tablet.css? In which way? What can you really do with CSS? No JavaScript in CSS. So it's all about different way of aligning elements, hiding and displaying elements, changing font sizes. And another thing you can do is, if you want to make the transition as smooth as possible, you can use, instead of fixed width and height, you can use proportional and percentage to express, the size of every div. And then it's important that you realign divs. So typically, on a large enough screen, you can afford a 3-column or 2-column layout. On a mobile, on a smartphone, you hardly can afford more than 1 column. So you realign horizontal column and the content to flow vertically so that you can scroll with a finger in a fairly smooth and easy way. So essentially, it's media queries. It's all about hiding things or just resizing things. Now, when I go to mywebsite.com with a smartphone, it means that I download everything that was planned for the website. So the website was initially built for what? A laptop. So all of the content is anyway downloaded here just to be hidden. Not to mention, when on the opposite round, you go on a very large screen, on a smart TV, you have the website optimized, say, for a laptop, and the same content is offered to a very large screen. Okay, you can, if you have a proportional liquid layout based on percentages, okay, the page fits into the large screen, but you have such large screen, and larger the screen, less the content. And you have the same experience with some metro apps, so large and just 3 buttons in it. So the size of the screen, large or small, should take you to rethink the use cases and the selection of use cases and design options you may have. On a smart TV, you might want to offer, a lot more content. But at the same time, you should ensure that the same huge amount of content is not downloaded on a small and poor device. You cannot really achieve this with media queries. But I will get back on this in a few moments. Another aspect I want to emphasize about media queries is that, sure, the website is based on a single code base, because the only difference is having multiple CSSs. But as mentioned, you have only control over device screen width and possibly orientation. You have no information about the operating system, no information about touch capabilities, no information whether it's a tablet. You don't even know whether the device is mobile or not. You only know the screen size, and then you design based on the screen size you have available, which is an excellent shortcut, yet a shortcut. It's, to me, close to simplistic than to simple. It works, because it works. Microsoft, when they last week announced made the Visual Studio launch, the website of Visual Studio is exactly made using media queries, and it displays nicely on iPhones and on smartphones, on devices. And if you resize the window with a browser, you see how the template and the layout changes. It's all done, I checked the source code, it's all done using media queries. But it could make sense for a website that has basically no other information than a large picture in the background with the Visual Studio logo, the picture of Jason Zender, or whoever it is, the main speaker there, and then the button, play the video. It's not really a complex page. There is no functionality in that page. So all that really matters is ordering a bunch of links to go to other pages to get more information in a tidy way on a small device. There is no really functionality, and there is no really business being implemented in that page. And there is, let me add this too, there is no need of offering the best performance, because there is no business associated with that page. What is the alternative to media queries? It's an approach that doesn't have an official name. Sometimes I call it, and I found it called, multi-serving. Another name that I'm starting using is adaptive views, as opposed to adaptive rendering, which is the approach based on media queries. But anyway, the essence of multi-serving is identifying classes of devices using code, server-side code. And the typical classes are smartphone, tablet, legacy devices, so whatever else is mobile, not a tablet and not a smartphone. It's a sort of catch-all classes for mobile devices, possibly smart TVs, and another option is regular desktop sites. Okay, typical classes, but here we are still in the realm of abstract definitions. Let me give you now a concrete implementation of this. And the technologies I'm using are ASP.NET MVC 3 and a library called Würfel to detect server-side the real capabilities of the device. Let me first run the application, and this is what we get. Okay, the page here says simply that, okay, this is the user agent. It recognizes the browser has a desktop browsers and says, okay, I'm sorry, but this site is not available on desktop browsers. Try accessing the same site using a mobile browser or a tablet. So what we can do is F12, and let's just change the user agent string so that it matches the user agent of my cell phone, an HTC Desire. Go back here, refresh F5, this is what we get. And this is more or less the size of a device. So now we see something. And the header here says that the backhand correctly recognized that this is a smartphone. But let me give you another example. Always go back to home here, tools. Let's try to change and use the Corby, which is a legacy device. Go here. This is another way of rendering the same content. So the functionalities are always the same, but the way in which they are laid out is different. But again, it's not that there's a CSS that just hides things. It's a completely different markup. This markup is considerably simpler than the other one. So smartphones receive a lot more details in download than these simpler devices. And finally, if I go here and change to iPad, oops, I get something different that just lays out buttons in a different way. This is what I mean. iPad, smartphones, legacy, and then optionally the website. Look that with just one website, I'm using MVC, but I never tried doing the same with ASP.NET Web Forms, but I assume that it's exactly the same. You have just one website, so you don't even have to distinguish the mobile site from the regular site. You don't even have to, add links. So go to the full site, go to the mobile site. It's just one website that intelligently adapts to the categories of devices that you have defined, not me. It's under your control, the classes. And the code base is mostly one. Okay, why mostly? Because it's essential, it's one code base, so the business logic is just one, the backend is just one. But depending on the data you want to send to each view, so each screen you present, okay? So the same logical screen, in this case, the home page. You need essentially to map each screen, okay, to a data model, to a class that brings data to populate elements in this screen. Now, as long as the data doesn't change on a per class of device basis, you really have one block of code. If tablets needs to receive more information, and I'm not talking about a longer list, I'm simply talking about a class with extra methods or extra properties, Okay? As long as you don't have that, or you cannot manage to have a single class with properties set or unset. I mean, if you can manage to define a single a view model class per each screen, you have one code base at all. And at most, you have one code base and a bunch of views and view model classes. It's not a big deal. Okay, I'm not saying it's automatic, it's free, it's easy. It's not for lazy people here, this approach. But it's absolutely effective. And look at this message here. For a better experience, try out the iOS app. Now, trust me, this message doesn't show if you view this website with an Android tablet. Because the backend code detected that, okay, we are viewing this through a user agent that tells us it's an iPad. So if it's an iPad, then the operating system is iOS, so I can provide here the link, okay, to the App Store entry where they can possibly download the specific app if they have one, if we have one for iPad. Okay, let me switch to the code. The key thing that is taking place here is is this class that I've called Würfel Device Profiler. And Würfel Device Profiler implements, in the end, an interface iDevice Profiler. I write this is my code, okay? There are no libraries here, so this is your code. So as a first step, I suggest you start with, let me increase a little bit its size. Responding. Oh, nice. Okay. The first thing is, in your definition of the ID file profiler, you define essentially the classes that you are interested in. So is desktop, is mobile, is smartphone, is tablet, is this, is that. And you can have as many categories as you like there. But this is just an interface. You also define, this is my implementation, a suffix for identifying views, so physical files that provide the view for tablets, for smartphone, for mobile, and so forth. And then you have to provide an implementation for this interface. In this project, I have a default device profiler implemented like this. So the mobile suffix is just the word, the keyword mobile, and the is smartphone returns the value returned interned by is mobile, and is mobile is has any mobile keywords. Essentially, looks into the user agent checks for a number of keywords that, if found in the user agent, are a significant sign that the device can be mobile. Don't be surprised by the extremely pragmatic approach. This is how whole libraries work. They have to parse. There's no other way. They have to parse the user agent string, and the difference between Würfel and others is in how smart they are in using regular expressions to capture bits and pieces of the user agent string. The default profiler here is a very, handmade, simple implementation, but effective if you don't really need to, detect all possible devices that may come your way. So if you start finding that this kind of code is not enough for you, then you might really want to, step up, get a license of the Würfel library, or another commercial product that gives you much more detailed and specific and precise and accurate information about the capabilities and characteristics of the device. So it's all about writing, some code that, starting from the user agent, determines whether the device is a tablet, a mobile, or whatever. For example, to check whether it's a tablet, I'm not really using here a key algorithm. I'm first checking whether it's mobile and if it contains tablet or iPad in the user agent. So not really a reliable algorithm, but still enough to pick up iPads. By the way, if you remember the request.browser object we still have in ASP.NET that tells you whether the requesting device is a number of things. One of the parameters is mobile, and they use an XML file, .browsers files you have on the installation on server-side of ASP.NET that are just rules, and the internal engine just parses the user agent against those keywords. So the approach taken here is simple, extremely simple, but it takes on the right algorithm. And of course, what I do in the Wurfel device profiler, Wurfel is a library that essentially is open source, but unless you are really working on an open source project, it requires a commercial license. So even on a website, it comes with the AGPL license, so it means that also on a website you need a commercial license. So in the end, to cut a long story short, you need to pay unless you are writing a project that you make open source yourself. So Wurfel is available as via NuGet, so it's fairly easy to bring on. And this class here, this app initializes the Wurfel root object in a globalized X. And then from the Wurfel container, I call getDevice for a request, and I pass the user agent, and I get back an iDevice object. iDevice is now a library object. And then I just use, via a bunch of handy extension methods, I'm just querying here. So isWireless is a property on the Wurfel library. So is mobile if the library tells me that it's wireless. Look at the definition of is smartphone. So you create, via this library, your query that tells you whether it is a smartphone or not. Device has to be wireless, but not a tablet. It has to be touch. Width has to be greater than 240. Device has OS Android at least 2.1, iPhone version at least 3.2, Windows Phone OS at least 7.1, and so forth. And this is your code, made really trivial by the extension methods on the Wurfel library. For a tablet, you have an handy method, isTablet, that does a much more significant and deep analysis of the user agent string than I did and I showed a moment ago. So in this way, you have, using this library or other libraries, you have the tools to understand a lot about the incoming devices. Consider that this kind of libraries, generically called the DDR, device description repositories, they normally offer you hundreds of capabilities per device. Most of the capabilities are not significant. But they tell you at least 20, 30 significant capabilities about video support, HTML5 support on the browser that comes with that user agent. It's server-side analysis. At that point, I have, in this helper library, a custom view engine, MVC view engine, that uses this information, okay, to change on the fly, to switch on the fly between index, mobile, smartphone, tablet. All I do, so once I have registered, and I do this in Globalize X, once I register Wurfel and I set up a resolver to bring on the current implementation of iDevice Profiler. And I have registered the custom view engine, everything I do in Globalize X. At that point, all I do is this. I just grab my data from the back end to display in the view, and then I just return view passing. I call the view index. And then it's up to the view engine to figure out, based on the user agent capabilities, whether it's index mobile, index smartphone, index tablet, and so forth. I have no need to be concerned about those level of details here. All I have to do is defining the classes I support and how I recognize what is a smartphone, what is a tablet, and so forth. Everything else is managed by the framework. And the other thing I need to do, of course, is having different views and possibly different pictures, possibly also the layout, different layouts. So possibly, different CSSs, different sets of images. Whatever I need to be different for a smartphone, so I can easily, resize image, keep the resized image available, ready-made on the server. It comes with a different name, so it can be cached, and that's it. So the extra code I write is very, very limited, and I still have a single code base, but now I can serve intelligently ad hoc markup to different devices. Okay. Consider that this is an implementation for MVC3. In MVC4, Microsoft offers a feature called display modes that essentially save you from the burden of creating and managing the custom view engine. So you no longer need a custom view engine in MVC4, but you can achieve exactly the same using the native display mode feature, which works even better than my current implementation of the view engine here. Okay. So, in the end, you have when you choose adaptive rendering via media queries, you have to decide what is your primary implementation. Normally, it's the laptop. So let's assume it's the laptop. Then you have tablets or smartphones that you want to adapt to, or perhaps you can have larger screens up there. But this is your central code that you have to expand in both directions. But the content with media queries, the content that fits here, is the same content you shrink here, or you shrink to enlarge here. You cannot have in any way extra information here unless you add JavaScript code or some other tricks to download data. But at that point, there is no guarantee that via CSS you can change the layout to fit the new information. So, in the end, it doesn't scale that well. So it's great for quick things, media queries, but if you're looking for a serious implementation of the mobile strategy, and if you want to really make your sites enjoyable from a mobile audience, I heartily recommend you look into multi-rendering or adaptive views, and the difference is just rendering on versus optimized for. And to finish off, a few words on a few key patterns for mobile development that can work regardless of you are writing a mobile site or a mobile application. Back and save, guess don't ask, a la carte menu, login and forget, predictive fetch, and then do as the Romans do, and memento mori. More details. The back and save, that's about, it's about the fact that users dealing with especially native mobile apps can have a hard time typing because the keyboard pops up, hiding a part of the screen. And I mean, it's not something separate, but it becomes part of the user interface. So the suggestion is save the content of input forms when the user is leaving the screen, and use the same metaphor that you use on when you write on a piece of paper versus the approach you use when you write on a computer. On a computer, nothing is saved, nothing is written until you save. Think of Word, of Notepad. On a piece of paper, you write, and whatever you write is written. Cannot be deleted, or at least not that easily. Take the same approach on mobile. So what's written is there. And perhaps if it makes sense business-wise to give a way for users to clear what they just typed, provide an ad hoc button to clear up what they just typed. But by default, save. So back and save. And I mean, you see the screenshot here is from for this Android is the interface of the browser. And whenever you change one of the parameters here, all you have to do is just selecting the new option. You don't have to click save anywhere. Just hitting the back button on Android is enough to save. So back and save, that's the name. And when you return, it's already there. And this is the same app. This is for Windows Phone. This is for iPhone. This is an app that I wrote. It's called Postino, for letting you send printed pictures from all over the world, starting from pictures you take with your camera. And when you put a signature here, whatever you draw here is saved until you push the button here to clear it up. Another pattern is guess, don't ask, still related to input. Try to limit, that's the message, try to limit data entry as much as possible. And another way, in addition to just saving whatever has been typed, is try to guess. Try to suggest values. For example, still thinking back to the Postino app, at some point you have to type the address, okay, for the user, for your friend, your relative, your significant one, you want to send a picture, okay? Now, at some point you have to fill the country field. Now, what could be a good guess for the country field? The country where you are, that you can detect from geolocation? Yes and no, because you could be easily traveling. So you have your phone configured to use, say, German, but you are in the United States, and if you use geolocation, the suggestion will be United States, but it's more likely that you want to send your picture back to Germany. So guess, an intelligent guess in this case, could be not using geolocation, but reading the locale of the phone and figure out from there the country and put that country as the default value in the country field. Then, okay, if it's right, okay, otherwise the field will be cleared and the name of the country will be typed or selected from a list. But this is an idea, a scenario, an example of what I mean by guess, don't ask. So don't expect that always the user provides data on an empty field, but if possible, try to anticipate, try to help users to think and offer suggestions about what they would do and what they would like to type in a given scenario. Use any available resources to make intelligent guesses and save users the largest possible amount of interaction. This is the sense of the pattern. And speaking of that, and with concrete advices, it means that when it comes to selecting an input scope for the keyboard, for the soft keyboard, that makes the one you choose is not trivial. For example, if you are typing here in this screen from Postino again, if you are typing a message, so the message that goes with a postcard, it means that you are writing some text So the configuration of the keyboard that the specific platform offers, in this case in Windows Phone, the one that offers also the smiley, that helps. I mean, likewise, if you are typing a phone number or a number offering automatically selected, the configuration that only offers numbers, that helps significantly users. Then, of course, when it comes to typing a password, there's no other way for them to switch between different configurations of the keyboard. But if you can save and provide just the buttons that they need, that will immensely help. And here is another example based on voice input. These are screenshots from an Android app for a to-do list for Android. They have the Speak Now facility. You just speak, you just pronounce a word, and based on what was understood, the system offers you, the application in this case offers you a suggestion of words for you to pick up. It's another way that, of course, relies on how reliable are voice recognition systems, but it's definitely something worth exploring. A la carte menu is all about making any action that the user can take quick and direct at any time. It should be clear at any time for the user which action to take and how to go to the next step. So make navigation clean as possible. Just few options and just a few clicks away. And has a corollary to this pattern, hide controls that are not going to be used by the user. So instead of simply disabling controls, just remove them, which in first place doesn't confuse users. Consider that for the most part, we are talking about the users, the masses. So not necessarily people who are used to deal with computers. So a disabled button may not even be noted as a disabled. So the user may, oh, why it doesn't work here? If you remove the button entirely, you have two benefits. Less options for the user, so a simpler UI, and more real estate space for you to fit other information into the screen. And here are a couple of examples of very clean, extremely clean UIs that, for what I can say, fulfill the a la carte menu pattern. Predictive fetch. When you use a smartphone and you are offline because you are on vacation and you don't want to hear from everybody, so you don't turn on the phone, or you don't turn on connectivity on your phone. You use the phone only to play some games, essentially, for days. You may notice that still the weather forecasts change day after day. How is it possible? Is it possible because of predictive fetch? Because some applications are built to download the data in advance, and weather forecasts are the perfect example. Whenever there's a connectivity, the software downloads forecasts for a week or 10 days, and then they refresh the forecasts every time there is connectivity, or if there's always connectivity periodically, every 6 hours, every day, I don't know. And when there is no connectivity, they still show you, looking at the current date, the forecasts for the day as it is cached. And when there is no information cached, okay, you don't get weather forecasts. This is the result of predictive fetch. Download the data that is likely to be used later and make sure you have enough data at any time to survive, to the extent that it is possible, lack of connectivity. A quick note on the implementation of the predictive fetch pattern. It has to do with the use of serialization API to save data to local files or perhaps to local storage, forms of local storage. files, local databases, or most likely local dictionaries that are, for small amounts of data that are even easier to use. The cache aside pattern relates to the how you implement this. So whether you cache every time or you read from cache, and every time you read from cache, you also try to refresh data. So it's an implementation detail, the reference here to the cache aside pattern. Log in and forget. Keep users connected until they explicitly sign out, unless there are significant security concerns with this approach. For an online banking software, I would not recommend this approach. But as far as a social information from a social network, and not necessarily Facebook, it could even be the social network related to your business, to your site is concerned, in that case, unless you have serious security concerns, try to keep users logged in as long as possible. So ask for credentials once, store them safely, and then, if needed, transparently authenticate the user in every session, or consider the user authenticated, depending on what is the backend you're working on. And here is how Facebook on Android works. You log in with your credentials, and then you are immediately here, and you start from this screen the next time. And this is instead a screenshot from a custom Android application that I use in my classes. When you use the login button on this custom application, I use the Twitter API essentially to move the user to a Twitter-served screen where the user authorizes this app to work on behalf, to access information. And once you sign in here, the application receives a token from Twitter. This token lasts for a certain amount of time, and until the token is there, the user is connected. And if the user signs out from Twitter on Android, the page will be displayed again. But as long as the user is connected on Twitter, and Twitter uses the login and forget, and is connected to your app, it's a sort of single sign-on, single sign-on between the app, the custom app, and Twitter. So this is one of the benefits of using the login and forget pattern. And yeah, to finish off, just a quick mention of two more patterns: do as Romans do and memento mori. Do as Romans do, as the name suggests, is about trying to leverage as much as possible the capabilities, the features of the local platform. So if you are writing iPhone, do as iPhone users expect you to do. If you are on Android, do as Android developers expect you to do. Quick example: Android has a menu button, which plays the role of the context menu in most Windows applications. Take advantage of the menu. So if you don't have room in the screen to offer all of the buttons and the options, just use the menu, because it's natural for users to hit menu if they don't know what to do, and because what they expect to do is not available immediately from the screen. Likewise, just another example of do as Romans do, in Android you also have a search button here, like in Windows Phone, but the meaning of these buttons is different on the two platforms. Because on Android, the search button means make a search in my app. In Windows Phone, the search button is just a quick shortcut to call the Bing engine. So use that in Android. Don't leverage that not in the same way, at least, in Windows Phone. And then memento mori is about the fact that all mobile apps, all platforms, have an application model that tries to kill applications when they go to the background. So the substance behind the memento mori is remember you will die. It's a Latin, translated to English is remember you will die, you eventually die. And so be ready to die at any time. That could be the more pragmatic translation in the context of mobile apps. So every application should always be ready to save important critical data, because it can be sent to the background at any time, and once they are in the background, nothing is certain. Once in the background, it's like you are dead. You may be still alive, you can be resumed to life in a moment, but in the background, it's like you are dead. So save, detect, and all platforms offer you a way to do that, detect the moment in which you are sent to the background and save your data on the data that is relevant to save on a persistent store so that it can be retrieved. You can resume from there. Okay, the way ahead. The overall idea behind mobile, so write software for users, is nothing new. But I'm sure, after about 20 years of career, I'm sure that we never wrote software like this, no matter of promises, no matter of commitments. But software, real software for real users is the only type of software that I guess will be called to write in the next 5 years. That's all. Thank you very much.